Well, I'd like to welcome Matt Di Teresa. Thanks so much for taking the time.
You're welcome.
Come out here and let me ask you a few questions. To start, where did you grow up?
I was born on Staten Island, New York. When I was 3 years old, my family moved to northern New Jersey. And I know when people hear New Jersey, they think of the Jersey Turnpike and chemical plants. But where I grew up was old dairy farms and a ski resort, and a lot of cornfields, tomatoes, onions, and a lot of woods. I spent most of my time as a kid in the woods, me and my friends, or down on the ball field. So it's not your typical New Jersey upbringing. And I lived there until I was 28, and I moved to Nevada.
Okay, what brought you to Nevada?
I was a pipe fitter and did a lot of work in New York City, and work was spotty. I'd get laid off sometimes, and me and my girlfriend came to Las Vegas for a week one time when I was laid off, and there were tower cranes everywhere, and I called a couple of the union halls, and they all said, "Oh yeah, we'll put you to work Monday." So I gave my boss 90 days notice, and I bought a rusty old van and drove out here. And it's the best move I ever made, I think.
Oh, very nice. So you were 28, you came out here. Now the whole time did you work as a pipe fitter?
No. When I first got here, the first job I had was a maintenance supervisor in an apartment complex. But, I didn't see any real future in that. It was a fun job, but it wasn't going anywhere. And when I decided to look for a serious job, the first place I went was Hughes Aviation. Used to be at the south end of the Strip.
Oh, okay.
And I worked there for about 4.5 years, and it was a good company to work for.
Is that kind of right across from where Mandalay Bay is now?
It's further down the Strip.
Further
It's
down,
where the
okay.
big stone pillars are with the neon propellers.
Oh, okay, yeah.
That was the original McCarran Field. But we got bought by a company from Florida, and it wasn't the same. They took away a lot of the perks, hired more managers, got rid of workers. So I joined the Operating Engineers Union, and I put 25 years in with them.
Oh, wow.
9 different hotels, mostly central plant, boilers, chillers, energy management, that kind of thing.
So you said 9 different hotels. A lot of the ones you see down on the Strip? Or?
Oh yeah, all on the Strip. The Flamingo, Bally's, Mandalay. I helped build Mandalay Bay, then stayed on. Paris. I worked at the Maxim. I think that's the only one off the Strip that I ever worked at. A lot of different hotels. I just went wherever the union had the best contract and the highest pension contribution.
Gotcha.
And it paid off because I'm retired now. So,
Very nice. So when did you come to Boulder City?
1993. I lived in Las Vegas for 7 years, and when I first moved out here, I went down to Lake Mead to check it out, and I saw these guys zipping back and forth in front of the beach on windsurfing boards. And I said, now, when I lived back east, I used to sail catamarans and monohull boats, but I'd never even seen a windsurfer. And I said, I got to try this. So I bought from the RJ Classifieds, I bought a windsurfing board. I didn't know anything about them, and the board that I bought had a floppy sail, and it was like a bathtub with a fin on it. It was a horrible windsurfing board. But so I was going down to Hemingway Harbor Sailing Beach to learn from the good sailors, and I kind of had to swallow my pride. They were all much older than me, and I was in much better shape, but they knew how to sail and I didn't. Not standing up on a board. But of course, after sailing, and I was down here every chance I got, 3-4 days a week after work in the summer. But I'd always stop in Boulder City on the way home for a beer in the local tavern, or the pit stop for a burger, and I really started to fall in love with this town. So after 7 years, when I decided to buy a house, I said, I might as well buy in Boulder City, because I'm spending all my time there anyway. Yeah.
So you decided to buy in Boulder City and you'd commute into work, but you stayed here in town. Did you keep up windsurfing?
Yeah.
Still do it today?
Yeah, not as much, but I still do. Yeah. Yeah, when I bought my house, well, when I first moved here, they were still selling off the last of the 6 company homes. And they were going for 35,000, 39,000. And I said, well, that'd be a good deal, but why would anybody want to live in Boulder City, Because it's so far from Las Vegas and it's boring and, all the fun's in Las Vegas. But after living here for 7 years, I regretted not buying a 6 company house. I still do, because my house was built in '85.
Oh, okay.
The original house burned down in like '83, I think. And I like it because it has the, good windows and the good electrical and plumbing and everything. But the old 6 company houses have character,
Yeah.
which my house, I could try to copy it, but no, I don't think you could pull it off,
Gotcha. So when did you first start getting involved with local politics?
Almost immediately. When I first moved here, we just acquired the El transfer area.
Okay.
All that land in the valley, and right away the city started talking about putting a gigantic dump out in the valley. And they had all these pie in the sky projections about we're going to make millions and millions of dollars and the city's going to be rich, because we were in some debt at that point. And but I was from New Jersey. One of my best friends is the administrator of the municipal landfill back where I lived. So I called him up and I asked him a lot of questions, and he told me, no, dumps generally don't make money over the long haul, because while they're operating, they do make money. But after you close the dump, which eventually you have to, you have to monitor it for 30 years. And if everything goes well, you're lucky to break even, because the monitoring costs are so high. And if they do find asbestos or something else, old batteries, chemicals, whatever, then you've got to excavate and you've got to send that stuff to a waste incinerator, and yeah, it can get really expensive. And the other thing is, in hindsight, if we had this dump was going to be bigger than the landfill at Apex.
Oh, wow.
I don't know if you've ever seen that, but
Yeah,
it's
I have.
massive.
Yeah, it's huge.
And if we had a pile of trash like that in the El Dorado Valley, I really doubt we ever would have got the solar plants, Cascada Golf Course, just because of the debris and the dust from all the excavating and everything. So I think it was the right thing to do. I met a few people in town who felt the same. We organized. We started getting information out, going to meetings, and and in the next 2 elections, we killed the dump, and in the next 2 election cycles, we turned over the whole city council, all 5 members.
Oh, okay.
So
I wasn't here at the time. Just for a little bit of the history, who was on the council at the time?
Eric Lungard was the mayor,
Okay.
and at the time I was kind of battling with Eric Lungard, but he and I always consider him to be a friend. Still, I think he's a good friend. Let me think, who else was? Bob Ferraro, Brian Nix. They were against it though, and I can't remember who the other members were.
Well, because Bob stayed on after that for quite a while.
Yeah, he became mayor.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Well, very good. So, and their big argument was, hey, we can bring in improved revenues.
Yeah.
So, and did it go to a ballot initiative, or did it get shut down kind of in
I think it just,
council?
I don't really remember. I think it just got shut down because it was so unpopular.
Gotcha.
It was a political risk. And it turned out to be a big political risk for all the people that didn't get reelected.
Right.
Iris Bletch, she was on the council then. And, I was good friends with her too, until she passed away. That's one thing that does bother me about local politics, that there are some people that have to make it personal.
Mm-hmm.
I can disagree with somebody in politics, and I disagree with a lot of people about political issues.
Right.
But, everybody has a right to their own opinion. And you don't accomplish, you kind of, you lose your relevance when you personally attack or threaten, harass people, city administrators, city employees. There's no need for that. It got kind of nasty back in those days, back in the 90s, but it was just a handful of people, just as it is now. Most people can speak at city council meetings and get their point across without getting personal. That's the way it should be.
Now, at one time, did you? Oh, I left my phone on. Apologize. Let me turn it off. So, did you? At one time, did you run for city council at one time?
Yeah, 8 or 9 years ago.
8 or 9 years ago, and was it a crowded field? I think it's always interesting to hear what's happened over the years.
Yeah, it was the first year that Cam Walker ran, and he was the big money candidate, from what I remember. But I think there were 7 or 8 of us, maybe even 9, running for two open slots on the city council. And yeah, it was interesting. I really didn't commit as much as I should have. I was still working, and my profession involves a lot of weird hours and overtime. So I missed some events. I should have gone door to door more. But dollar for vote, for the amount of money that I raised and spent, I only put in $200 of my own money and raised about another $1,200 or $1,400. And I got more votes per dollar, I think, than anybody else. But but I didn't get elected.
Have you ever thought about running again?
Yeah, I have. I'm retired. I'm retired now. I've been retired for almost 4 years, so I have the time to commit. But I'm really enjoying retirement, so I'm not so sure I want to do that. I give credit to councilmen. You don't get paid a lot of money, and it does eat up a lot of your time. You got to be dedicated, and that's, I think, our 2 new councilmen, Karen McManus and Warren Harhay, I think they're doing a great job. I'm not so sure that they even knew how much time you have to commit.
Right.
But I think they're doing a great job.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to talk a little bit about, you've been very involved in the Community Alliance since it started. So what do you feel, it had a lot of momentum in this last election. They were able to get the 2 candidates they endorsed in.
That was a good segue.
Yeah. And they, things went well as far as where they stood on the growth ordinance. Why do you think that built so much momentum, the Alliance?
Well, there was, like most people who live here, I go to the local tavern, I go to the coffee shop, I go to the barber shop, and all I was hearing was frustration with city government, that they're off doing their own thing and they don't care what the public thinks. So there was a need there, and Laura and Tracy, that started it, really, I think they saw that too, and they tapped into that need. And right away, we had people signing up, dying to sign up. Now I think there's over 1,400 members. They don't all show up at all of our meetings, but they're a committed group, I think, from what I see on our Facebook page. Yeah, people were just looking for a way to get out their frustrations with city government and make their voice heard. It was kind of like that during the dump thing. People would get up and speak at the city council meeting, and then they just ignore you. So now I think in the last election, I won't say we got 2 people elected, 2 people that we backed got elected. But they both worked really hard and got themselves elected.
Right.
Now, the next election coming up in 2019, I hope that we repeat the same results.
Do you think do you feel like there's kind of a loss of momentum there? Because it felt like to me that a lot of what drove it was the growth,
yes.
Right? This idea of, hey, they're changing the growth ordinance, they want to make us grow too fast, they're not listening to us, I love my small town. Do you think with that not being, I guess, as prominent an issue, without a question like that on the ballot, do you think that'll hurt some of the momentum?
I think right now we've lost some momentum because the city really isn't doing anything outrageous right now. But I will guarantee before the next election that they will. I don't think the Hoover Dam Gateway Center is is dead by far. I think that they're trying to run utilities out into the valley and make us pay for it. And they're trying to do it underground now instead of out in the open. So no, there's, growth is always going to be an issue in this town. This is the only town I know of in the country where, the city owns all the land, and there are restrictions that the voters are put in place, so they can't just sell the land and reap the profits. I mean, everything has to be approved by the voters. I don't know of another city in this country that's like that. So we kind of have the power to chart our own destiny here in Boulder City, and that's one of the main things that attracted me to this town. It's direct democratic action, and small d democratic action, and that's what makes this town so attractive to me. That's why the property values are so high. That's why crime is so low. That's why the parks are so nice. Because this is what people want, quality of life here, and they don't want. I'm not anti-development. I'm not anti-developer, but I want controlled development.
And with that, there's always this, like you said, growth will always be an issue in this town, just because we've made it that way, right? That we're able to speak our minds and we can debate it. And what do you feel is, we have really, in my mind, it's really driven by two things: the acre sale and the amount of homes that one developer can build in total, the 130 and 120.
Yeah, you mean the controlled growth ordinance itself?
Right.
Yeah, 120 allotments a year.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people are under the impression it's 3% or whatever. It's actually 120 allotments, which is, I don't think we've ever come close to that.
Yeah, and do you feel the growth ordinance is that it's set up correctly? I know that one of the things that came out in the last election is, on one hand, no one wanted to see it grow too fast. On the other hand, you had people saying, hey, we're only averaging 9 or 10 a year.
Yes. And the loss of the Vons supermarket had a lot to do with that. Our school population was stagnant or dropping. A lot of people said, we need to build some houses and get some families here. And I agree with that, but I don't think the closure of Vons was as much due to the smoke. For years we had 3 supermarkets here in town with Central Market, Vons, and Albertsons. And I think the Vons thing was more a product of, they were bought by, what was the name of that company?
Oh, I'm not familiar, but I know it was bought out by, well, there was a lot of ties between Albertsons and them, correct?
Yeah. But, that company grew too fast and they failed. So it's not like they just packed up and left town because they weren't getting enough business. It was a failure of the corporate structure of that supermarket chain. I'd still like to see at least one more market in town. It doesn't have to be a big supermarket, but at least something like Central Market used to be, or Trader Joe's, or something along a specialty store along that line, just so Albertsons has some competition. And nothing against Albertsons. It's, I shop there most of the time. The employees are wonderful, but competition's always a good thing.
Right. Well, and I know that with Storybook coming in, there will be some more homes. Do you feel that the ordinance is sufficient as is, and that really there doesn't need to be tweaks, and we'll have periods of higher growth and periods of lower growth, or do you think there might need to be some tweaks down the road?
Right now, I think it's just about right. Yeah, 120 allotments a year is, that's more than enough to keep growth under control. Because, I lived in Las Vegas, I've experienced Henderson, growth doesn't pay for itself. There's still people in town that think we should get some casinos, legalize gambling. You have to hire more cops, more firefighters, more EMTs. Crime's going to go up. I mean, what we have here is a pretty good thing. And as far as tweaking the controlled growth ordinance, that's a kind of a scary thing, because once you start fiddling with it, who knows what's going to get stuck in there and what's going to be exploited by weaknesses in the language. I'm for keeping it just the way it is, plain and simple, 120 allotments a year, and that's it.
Very good.
And there are even people that I see on the internet that are trying to find loopholes in that. You know, trying to take allotments that weren't used from years ago. Well, these weren't used, so now we can use them now. You know, we can use them now. That's not the way it works, and it's plainly stated.
Do you, you know, you talked about this kind of angst that grew into the alliance, and I think a lot of that was around the growth issue. But what could, like you said, it's kind of calmed down some. What do you think city officials could do? I don't want to say manage the angst, but help keep the peace in the town. And
Well, you know, even Mayor Woodbury himself has stated that, you know, the city needs to do a better job of communicating with the citizens. So I think that's 100% true. I don't think he's been very successful at it, but at least, you know, at least he's talking about it.
well, let's start with that one. If you were to sit down with Mayor Woodbury and say, "Hey, listen, Rod, this is what I think you could do to better communicate, whether it's your vision or how we work with people," what do you think you should do specifically?
Well, it's been brought up, suggestions to have more town hall meetings, you know, meetings at the library, where people can, at the city council meetings, you can get up and talk, but you can't ask questions. They're not required to answer. And that's the way most, you know, government meetings are. Otherwise, we'd be there all night. But a town hall meeting is a perfect way for citizens to get up and ask questions, as long as they do it respectfully. You know, don't yell, don't call names. That would be a real good first step.
And you have more experience with it than I do, but is that really, is that set in stone the way they're run? Because I have always felt that's odd. You know, you go up, you stand up, and you say, "I don't understand why this is happening."
Mm-hmm.
You get some silence, and they say, "Okay, thank you." Next, you know, next person. Is there a thing that so that they can't really respond, or is it purely a managed time?
I've never read anything or heard anything in Robert's Rules of Order, and no, I think they, as a matter of fact, back in the days when Eric Lundgaard was mayor, you know, they usually would answer your questions. We had some real long city council meetings back then, but they were good meetings, you know. I think we had a better newspaper back then. I really don't want to pick on the Boulder City Review, but, you know, I've been here 25 years, and I don't think we've ever had a local newspaper that really served the public like it should. You know, they don't do, none of these papers have done much investigative reporting. They just take the city line and print it, and, you know, they don't question it. And, you know, that's part of the job of the BCCA, I think, the Community Alliance, is that we have people that, including myself, go to City Hall, get numbers from the utility department, go home and crunch the numbers and find out, oh, wait a minute, the city's not telling the truth about this. You know, that would be nice if a newspaper would do that, instead of relying on us to do it. And I'm not just saying the BCCA, like we're doing the newspaper's job, I don't want to insult them, but private citizens. You know, there's plenty of people that are not in the BCCA that do that, and come up with some amazing information.
Well, and do you think, so one of the things that you mentioned was this idea of city, I guess, town hall meetings where people could speak. And I know that a lot of people have kind of floated more town hall meetings, and it seems like there might be one and then it kind of dies down for a little. Do you feel like that's just because of lack of time or lack of interest?
Well, Kiernan McManus and Warren Harhay have both said that they're, you know, ready to schedule meetings. So I think it's going to happen, and it's going to be interesting, because there are some people, you know, I hate to say it, that will yell and call names, you know, because they're frustrated with city government. But they should take it as an opportunity to learn things from city government instead of a chance to blow off steam. But yeah, I think it's going to happen. As a matter of fact, I think they have one scheduled for the near future.
I'm good.
Yeah, it can only be a good thing.
Yeah. Well, recently there were some things that came up that looked like they would be ballot questions. but then it looks like they're not going to be ballot questions. Particularly the sale of 2 pieces of land. The one that came up first and died down very quickly was the
Water filtration plant?
water filtration plant with the community gardens and the small park on it. And then the other one was, of course, the hangar. And it looked like the hangar had a little bit more chance of being on a ballot initiative, and then it kind of died down. What were your thoughts on, do you think it needed to not be voted on? Was it too soon to let people voice their opinion?
Well, a lot of people that are on the Historic Preservation Committee and really into historic preservation disagreed with me about the water filtration building. I've been in that over the years. Brock Armentrout has given tours, and I've been in that building a few times. And you know, it's still in pretty good shape, but you can see it's starting to deteriorate. And a local businessman who, him and his family operate restaurants and
This is
taverns.
Turner, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, he came up with an artist rendering of his plan, and it keeps the community gardens and the reflections
Park.
all the sculptures, and big time enhanced landscaping, and he's going to turn it into a brew pub with a restaurant, microbrewery, outside dining, and for me that's a win-win, because for one thing you get somebody in there that's going to maintain and even improve the building, and then it's open for everybody to enjoy. I think if we just keep the building the way it is, within 10 or 20 years it's going to fall down. It's just not going to last forever. It's already been vandalized, although most of that's been repainted and covered up, but that's going to happen in the future. I worry about homeless people camping out in there and starting a fire. That's always a big concern. Yeah, I'd like to see it utilized. Same thing with the hangar. I don't know what we could do with that, but there's been some good suggestions, swap meets or whatever. The city could use it for some purpose, And it's in bad shape too, though. The electrical's tore out and deteriorating, and the windows are broken. You can look up and see the sky through the roof. So the pigeons love it. That's about it.
Well, and I'm curious on the water filtration. The people, I think some people are behind that idea. Hey, let's get something we could all get behind.
Mm-hmm.
It beautifies it, keeps some of its historical integrity, gets a use out of it. But isn't there always the risk that that's the intent, but once it's sold, someone else comes in and buys it, or the Turners, they're not being profitable in the business, it gets sold, and now we potentially lose the building?
I'm not a real estate expert, but I've been told by some people that restrictions can be put in the deed, and that we could make sure that carries over to the next owner if that happens. But so far, the Turners have been really successful, and everything they've done really fits in with the spirit of Boulder City. It's historic, it's pretty, it employs local people. I think it would be a win-win situation for the city.
Of course, one of the issues might be if it's put up to auction, we don't know that the Turners are going to be the ones who end up with it, of course.
That's true.
Right.
The only other issue I have with turning it into turning it over to a businessman is that it is in a residential neighborhood. There may be noise issues. People in that neighborhood probably would object to late hours. Headlights, traffic, parking, although it does have a decent sized parking area. If it's too successful, it could be a problem.
Yeah, a balance there. Do you know, I know it kind of came up and went quiet. Do you know if they're still pursuing that at all?
I haven't heard anything.
I heard.
Yeah, I would like to think that they are, but they did face a lot of opposition.
Well, and it seems, just personally to me, I I can see both sides of both those buildings. You know, it would. I'd hate to see them torn down. At the same time, I'd hate to see them fall down.
Yes.
You know, and so there's a balance there. But it seems to me one of the sad parts is unless we hear the voice of the people, we won't know. You know?
Well, you know, I would have no problem with putting advisory ballot questions up, and then you can find out what people really think.
Right.
You know, it may be that it would be very unpopular. It may be that it's popular. I have no idea. You know, you tend to. Most of the people that I talk to are definitely into historical preservation. So they're, you know, it's like an echo chamber though. Those are the people that I talk to. Now maybe, you know, people that I don't know have a different opinion. I'd like to find out, you know, what the general guy on the street actually thinks. That's like, you know, the BCCA. You know, we only hear from the people that come to our meetings, or a lot of people on the Facebook page, etc. And it's not a homogenous group. There's a big diversity of opinion there. I know that some people think that it's left wing or it's right wing, or, but I honestly don't know the political persuasion of most of the people that are in the BCCA, and especially not the people that run it. I don't know if they're Democrats. I don't know if they're Republicans. You know, because when it's concerning Boulder City, party shouldn't enter into it. As a matter of fact, Tracy and Laura, who started BCCA, to this day I have no idea whether they're left wing, right wing, because it doesn't apply to Boulder City. You know, just the people that bother to show up at the meetings are just concerned about this town. You know, they're not looking to get anybody elected outside of Boulder City in the next election. We only really talk about legislation that would affect Boulder City. Yeah, I hope it continues that way.
Now, just comparing the two, you know, you talked about back when they got the El Dorado Valley, there was kind of this movement, and I don't know if at the time you guys started a group at that time at all, or if it was just kind of on that one issue. And
yeah, it was on that one issue.
okay, so there was no official kind of group that came together at that time?
No, as a matter of fact, it was such a small group that we used to meet at our houses. Of course, we didn't have the big library back then, but there was only a dozen of us or so. But, you know, like I said, we organized and we got a few things in the newspaper, and we were at all the city council meetings. And I don't know, it was actually, I hate to say this, but it was actually kind of easy, because when people hear the word dump, there's a negative connotation to it. It's like in the movie Jaws when you say shark. You know, if you say barracuda, nobody cares. You say shark, everybody pays attention. Well, being from New Jersey, when people say dump, you have that picture in your mind, and it's not a nice picture. And people that have been to dumps like Apex, they remember the smell. And is this what we want Boulder City to be known for? This gigantic dump? You know, I think it would have been horrible for this town. And so we had kind of like a couple of steps on the city government, because they were fighting a really bad picture.
Gotcha. No, that makes sense. And so after that, it never really. You did sound like you helped, at least worked on getting certain people elected, similar to maybe how the BCCA endorsed a few people.
Yeah, we did.
Okay.
But that was the big topic back then too.
Right.
You know, you know, when you're running, you go to candidates' nights, you give speeches, you go knock on doors, and that was the big subject that everybody wanted to talk about.
Gotcha.
Was the dump.
If you had to predict in this next election what the big subject would be, what would you think it was, or what it will be?
Well, I think the Hoover Dam Gateway Center is not dead. It's not a dead issue. A lot can happen in a year, and if they move forward, or information comes out that they have been moving forward, and you know, not telling people, not being honest about it, that will be a big subject. You know, the most valuable thing in Clark County is land, and we've got a ton of it. And developers are frothing at the mouth to get a hold of the El Dorado Valley. I mean, you know, that they want to put Sun City El Dorado out there, and, you know, whatever they can do, a commercial development. So that's what I meant when I said that growth is always going to be an issue in this town, just because of that constant pressure from the outside. You know, one of the best things about Boulder City is when I would come home from work, go past the railroad pass and over the overpass, and you have that buffer zone, you know, of desert. And it's, so you're separate from the sprawl of Henderson and Las Vegas, and you just breathe a sigh of relief. You just go, you know, I'm home. And we should never lose that, you know. That's one of the things that makes Boulder City special.
Now, as you roll into the next election, if that is the issue, do you think the Community Alliance, and I know you don't necessarily speak for the Alliance as a whole, but do you feel that they feel the need to say, hey, we have to get different people, or is it, hey, we could work with the current people if they would help us work on these particular issues?
Well, obviously we're only talking about 3 individuals.
Yeah, I mean, it comes down to Rod, Rich, and Peggy.
Peggy Levitt, yes.
Yeah, and I don't know personally whether I would be surprised if Peggy runs again, but I don't know. She might.
Yeah, she might. I'm only speaking for myself, but I would expect that, I don't know, the personal impression I get is that I could work with Rich Schumann, although I disagree with some of his votes. You know, he's a reasonable guy, but I have to say that I disagree with almost everything that Rod Woodbury and Peggy Levitt do. Now, they're nice people. You know, I really don't know either of them personally, but they seem to be nice people, and I just disagree with them politically. Let me bring, I don't know how to bring this up.
Just bring it up.
Well, there's the Mormon thing. Now, you know, it's a very touchy subject because, you know, we have a city attorney and the old city attorney that were LDS.
Right.
And, you know, that, a lot of people in City Hall are LDS.
Right.
And so are people on the city council. Not all, but some. And when that subject comes up, people say, well, you're against the Mormon religion. And I'm like, no, this is not a question of religion. It's a question of corruption. If they all belong to the same bowling league, I would be just as outraged. If, you know, the mayor was on the bowling league and all of a sudden we got a new city attorney who was on the bowling league, and then 2 more people ran for city council that were on that bowling league, and, you know, the mayor helped them get them elected, and then we had...
Well, let me take, I mean, obviously...
But if we had a city administrator who slept in a city building so he didn't have to pay for a motel room, and he was on that bowling league, and got off pretty much scot-free, I would have to think, as an objective observer, I'd say that there is corruption here. And it doesn't make any difference what the association is, whether it's religion or ethnicity or, you know, bowling league or related families. You know, nepotism is corruption.
And when you look at it, though, for running for office, I mean, clearly you said, hey, if he's on the bowling league and he helped so-and-so get elected, I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Is there something wrong with helping your friend on the bowling league get elected?
No, but I see, like the hiring of the new city attorney. I don't think that Mr. Morris was the most qualified. I don't think he interviewed well at all. I definitely don't think he was the best candidate. The fact that he holds a high position in the church and was used to be the mayor's law partner, I guess, that makes me very suspicious that he had a leg up on everybody else because of those things. So, you know, religious association shouldn't disqualify you. Exactly. You know, this country, we all have the right to follow whatever religion we want to.
Right.
So it shouldn't disqualify anybody, but it also shouldn't give anybody an advantage.
Sure.
You know, you should be blind to it. And I don't think that's what happened. And I think this is gonna come to bite the city in the butt, and it's gonna cost us a fortune.
And when you say bite the city, what do you think will bite the city about it? Just
Well, I think, like, I know some people have already brought up the subject that, in our municipal court, you know, I think Judge Miller's done a great job. I love the guy. You know, I don't have a lot of experience in his courtroom, but I have sat in on a few things.
Uh-huh.
I did have one ticket for riding my bicycle on the sidewalk years ago, but I think he's done a fantastic job as a judge. But I can see that a lot of lawyers are gonna try and have decisions thrown out and convictions thrown out because of the relationship between the city attorney and Judge Miller. And
what do you think Judge Miller should do in that case?
I don't know. That's a tough call. You know, how I guess if he recuses himself, somebody else steps in. But after if he has to keep recusing himself over and over, you know, he's going to have to be replaced. And I would hate to see that happen. I don't know. You know, we could end up with a much worse judge.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, that's interesting, and I mean, it's interesting you bring it up. Going back to Steve Morris, if Rod would have recused himself, if he would have said, you know, I used to be his partner, I know him too closely, I'll stand out. And this is obviously hypothetical, just me and you talking, but what do you think would have happened? I mean, the vote would have been 2-2.
Well, actually, the vote was 4-1. Warren Harhay voted for Steve Morris.
Oh, he did? I
Yeah.
thought he voted against with Kiernan.
No, and if I remember correctly, it was 4-1.
So, well, we'd have to look that up, because
Yeah.
I always thought in that instance Warren was opposed, but we can find out. But in that case, Rod could have recused himself, and Steve still would have been our city attorney.
Could be.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah, you know, which tells me that we need to turn over some seats on the city council. You know.
But I mean, like you said, if Warren voted for him, someone who you feel is fairly level-headed, even-minded, a good man, chose Steve Morris.
Well, I can't speak for Warren Harhay,
Right.
but I kind of.
And honestly, I really think he voted against him. But anyways.
Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah.
But I think that this is just my opinion, but I think that he knew that he was going to be hired. It was inevitable, so
Why rock the boat?
Exactly. Yes. But like I said, I can't speak for Councilman Harhay.
Right. Well, very good. And I think it's interesting to hear, and I do hope, I'm always a big fan of trying to find common ground on the two sides. I think there is a lot of unity. I think there's a lot of good people at city offices as well as working for the city. And I think there's a lot of good community involvement within the people of the city. So.
Yeah, we've got some new faces that I'm impressed with, including the chief of police, the city manager so far. And that's a tough job to be in because with this form of city government, the city manager has more power than the mayor. The mayor just conducts the meetings. You know, the big decisions are made, a lot of them, by the city manager. So that's a high-profile job, and so far I think he's doing a great job. Mr. Mays, what is it, community development?
Yeah, I think that's right.
He's been very open and doing a great job. City clerk, Lorene, she's always done a great job. And when I go to City Hall, or I email them and I request information, they've never said no, and usually they say, well, come by tomorrow and we'll print it up for you. You know, they've always been really responsive, so things could be a lot worse at City Hall.
Great. Well, before I close here, I want to ask you maybe not Boulder City Politics question, just a little bit more about you. What else do you like to do outside of Boulder City Politics now that you're retired?
I don't know, I started to get into photography, digital photography, since I've retired. I'm going to the gym again, which is a good thing. Ride my mountain bike. I've also got an electric bike I ride around town. Just try and stay active. Try and make the happy hours whenever I can. But I've been reading a lot more. I've been writing a lot. So retirement's not exactly what I thought it was. You have so much time to fill up, and more time than I have things to do. But I'm starting to find more things to do.
Well, I do enjoy your writing when you post it.
Thank you.
So it's very good. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to sit down and talk with me.
My pleasure.
I appreciate it.